Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing Breaches of the Week. And before I dive into the breaches, I'd like to, as always, thank the people that messaged me, tagged me, linked me, whatever it was, to get me a lot of this information. It always helps me out. And if you have a breach for me, please feel free to send it my way, and I'm happy to give you a shout out as well. This week, it's Jason Dance, Sanders Slidenerink, and Chris Fallon. Guys, thank you very much. And with that, let's start with Konica Minolta, the giant copier people, as well as everything else that they do. They got hit with a ransomware attack at the end of July that apparently impacted services for almost a week. On July 30th of this year, customers began reporting that Konica Minolta's product supply and support sites were not accessible. Their site remained down for almost a week, and customers stated that they could not get a straight answer onto what was causing this outage. Some Konica Minolta printers were also displaying a service notification failed error, which led Konica Minolta to update their website outage message to contain a link to a support document, and basically they got hit with ransomware. Now, the ransomware note belongs to a relatively new ransomware gang called Ransomware EXX, which was reported at the end of June of 2020 when it was used in an attack on the Texas Department of Transportation. Obviously, Konica Minolta is back online. If I've got more information for you on that, I'll let you know, but heads up, Konica Minolta users. Moving on, let's talk about the Carnival Cruise Corporation. This is the massive cruise ship line. They got a ransomware attack that occurred on August 15th, which the company says, and I quote, accessed and encrypted a portion of one brand's information technology systems. Carnival Cruise actually has multiple different cruise lines that they own under different names. And so here we are. Now, per the SEC filing, and I quote, based on its preliminary assessment and on the information currently known, in particular that the incident occurred in a portion of the brand's information technology systems, the company does not believe the incident will have a material impact on its business, operations, or financial results. Nonetheless, we expect that the security event included unauthorized access to personal data of guests and employees, which may result in potential claims from guests, employees, shareholders, or regulatory agencies. Now, here's the kicker of the whole thing. It was reported that in March of 2020, Carnival was actually notified by its employees in IT that there was an active threat that was actually inside their network and servers. When this was reported to the global operations for Carnival, their response was basically, well, it's not right. That is incorrect. There are no signs of a threat. And so by virtue of that and our risk management, we're good. And here we are. So there you go. We'll see how deep this one goes. Haha. Moving on, let's talk about a company called FreePic. Now, this is a photo and graphic design site. According to their official statement, they had a security breach that occurred after an attacker or attackers used an SQL or SQL injection vulnerability to gain access to one of its databases storing user data. Now, FreePic said that the attacker obtained usernames and passwords for the oldest 8.3 million users registered on both its FreePic and Flat Icon websites. FreePic did not say when the breach took place or when they found out about it, but here we are. So if you use FreePic or Flat Icon or Flaticon, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Experian. This is the massive financial credit reporting agency, specifically their South Africa division. While Experian itself didn't mention a number of affected users in a recent report, the South African Banking Risk Information Center Anti-Fraud and banking non-profit organization who worked with Experian to investigate this data breach disclosed that the attacker had reportedly stolen data of 24 million South Africans and 793,749 business entities within South Africa as well. Now, interestingly enough, according to the company Experian in South Africa, the suspected attacker behind this breach has actually been successfully identified, and the stolen data of its customers has been successfully deleted from his or her computing devices. So we'll see where that goes. We'll see if it is fully deleted. But heads up to you in South Africa, odds are you were probably affected by the Experian breach. Moving on, let's talk about community Amazon machine images, or AMIs, that are actually running in Amazon Web Services. Now, this is slightly complex, but bear with me because this could affect an untold amount of organizations from small to massive out there. Now, if you are running AWS, Elastic Cloud Compute, or EC2 instances based on community Amazon machine images, or AMIs, heads up. You need to check for potentially malicious embedded code following a recent discovery of a crypto miner lurking inside a community AMI. Now, here's what's going on. For those that don't know, an AMI is a template with a software configuration. It could be an operating system, application server, or applications needed to launch a virtual machine. So from an AMI, a user can launch an instance or a copy of an AMI running a virtual server in the cloud. So it makes it very quick and easy to deploy. Now, basically, you can get this from a couple of different ways from Amazon. One is through the AWS Marketplace, where users can buy AMIs or pay per use for them. So for example, let's say you need a pre-existing Windows configuration with a whole bunch of different stuff. Instead of taking the time to install, do all of that, you simply just grab it from the marketplace, pay for what you need, and go on from there. And so basically, when you are dealing with the AWS Marketplace, these AMIs are verified by Amazon and can only be published by pre-approved users. So by virtue of that, Amazon EC2 integrates with the marketplace so developers can charge other EC2 users for use of their AMI image. But Amazon also lets users create community AMIs, making them public so that they can be shared with other AWS accounts that they don't own. So in other words, somebody creates a community AMI, like let's say I do that and I'll use my fictitious Windows operating system running, whatever it is I'm running. I could then make it public and allow other AWS accounts to launch it, access it, and all of that. Or I could lock it down to say only a few specific accounts. But the ones we're talking about are public. And so those who launch a community AMI, for example, if I were to launch yours, I'm not paying for your AMI, but I am paying for the time that it would take me to compute and store, on AWS and all of that. So people use a lot of these. Somebody has been affecting these with crypto miners, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly. So if you use community AMIs in AWS, heads up to you. You might have a problem. Moving on, let's talk about F5 Networks. They make a product called Big IP. A new security alert from the FBI indicates that a group of Iranian hackers are on a spree of compromising Big IP products, making use of a known vulnerability that was discovered by researchers in early July. I remember reading about this back then. Now, this alert has been linked by cybersecurity reporters to a group called Foxkitten. This is a threat actor with known ties to the Iranian government. So the quick solution for you, if you are running Big IP or F5 Networks products, is to update them to completely current because they are susceptible to attack. Moving on, let's talk about the Canadian government's GC Key service. Now, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat confirmed that thousands of user accounts for online Canadian government services were recently hacked. The hackers targeted the GC Key service with credential stuffing attacks. This service is used by some 30 federal departments in Canada, as well as the Canada Revenue Agency. And so GC Key allows Canadian citizens to access services like employment and social development, Canada's My Service, Canada accounts, immigration, refugee status, citizenship information, all this kind of stuff. Now, the threat actors apparently acquired login credentials of 9,041 GC Key account holders and then started trying to log into every service that they possibly could, and here we are. So heads up to you if you are Canadian or in Canada and using the GC Key service to access your Canadian goings-on. Huge problem. Moving on, let's talk about Instacart. Again, now if you recall about a month ago, I was actually involved in identifying a breach where BuzzFeed News broke the story, and I helped verify that for them. Obviously, Instacart denied that they had a breach, but now Instacart has disclosed a security incident caused by 2 employees working for a company providing tech support services for Instacart shoppers. According to a press release that was published a couple of days ago, Instacart says that 2 employees, and I quote, may have reviewed more shopper profiles than was necessary in their roles as support agents. The company is now notifying 2,180 shoppers via email about the incident, and the figure represents the Instacart user profiles the company believes the 2 employees might have needlessly accessed while working as tech support agents for a third party that was supporting Instacart. Instacart said it learned of the breach in procedure of the 2 supporting agents following a routine security audit. And so I'm wondering if that audit was because of the recent reported breach. that I was a part of. So I'd be very curious to see where that goes. But heads up to you, Instacart users and or shoppers. Moving on, let's talk about the University of Utah. They revealed the other day that they paid a ransomware gang $457,059, that's oddly specific, in order to avoid having hackers leak student information online. In a statement posted to its website, the university said that it actually dodged a major ransomware incident and that the attackers managed to encrypt only 0.02% of the data stored on its servers. The university said its staff restored from backups. However, the ransomware gang threatened to release student-related data, which in turn made the university management rethink their approach in terms of not paying them. So they did. Now, we'll see where this goes. We'll see if that actually was the case, because if that data gets dumped out there, even though they paid, that's obviously a huge, huge issue. Heads up, University of Utah students, faculty, employees, anything. Moving on, let's talk about COVID-19 patients in South Dakota. This is a result of the Blue Leaks update, or rather the Blue Leaks breach that happened about a month or two ago or so, which I was reporting on. And if you recall, a service in Texas that was used by thousands of law enforcement agencies across the United States got hit, and all of their data got dumped from all these law enforcement agencies. And so now we are looking at South Dakota because their fusion center was hit, which means 911 calls from potential COVID patients, as well as first responder records of patient intake as they are getting these patients, was compromised. That's obviously a HIPAA breach under U.S. compliance law for protected health information, and South Dakota says that the parties have been notified, so we'll see where that goes. But we may see more COVID patient leaking by virtue of this, because Blue Leak continues to expand. Moving on, let's head on over to the UK and talk about the Ritz London. Obviously, that's a very nice hotel. They launched an investigation into a potential data breach that affected its food and beverage reservation system. Now, the information stolen in the breach seems to have been used by the attackers to worm their way into basically the wallets of hotel clients. In a series of tweets shared over the weekend, the Ritz London confirmed that it was made aware of a potential breach on August 12th, adding that the compromised data did not include any credit card or payment details. The hotel went on to notify the affected customers as well as the authorities about the breach. Obviously, we'll see where this goes, but heads up if you've stayed or have anything to do with the Ritz Carlton in London, or the Ritz London. Moving on, let's talk about Cook County in the state of Texas. More than 2,000 letters were recently mailed out to North Texans, because obviously this is in North Texas, notifying them that their personal information might have been compromised during a July cyber attack, and that is according to Cook County Judge Jason Brinkley. Now, on July 4th, a ransomware attack on the county's information systems for the Cook County's Sheriff's Office, and that's tripping me up because Cook County, Illinois is where Chicago is, so here we are. But anyway, they hit the information system for the Cook County Sheriff's Office, which resulted in a data breach of personal information, and this is according to reporting sources. Now, Judge Brinkley said that the compromised data came either from the Sheriff's Office reports or cases going back several years, and apparently the Cook County Sheriff Office was the only department impacted by this attack. So heads up to you, Cook County, Texas. Moving on, I want to talk about YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok users. Heads up to all of you, because a database of some 235 million YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok profiles that was held by a now closed company called Deep Social was left exposed without password protection or any other authentication procedures. Now, on Wednesday, August 19th, report on news sites said in part that Bob Diachenko of Comparitech, the person that discovered this, first contacted Deep Social using the email address listed on its website to disclose the exposure. The administrators of Deep Social forwarded the disclosure to Social Data, which I believe is the company that bought Deep Social, and the CTO of Social Data acknowledged the exposure, and the servers hosting the data were taken down about 3 hours after Comparitech contacted them. Now, Deep Social provided, among other things, obviously, social media data to people that were willing to buy it. The company reportedly is no longer operating. Social Data is in a similar business, which seems to either have absorbed their data or whatever that was, but the data that was hit from YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok users appears to be profile name, real name, profile photo, account description, whether the profile belongs to a business or has advertisements, Statistics on follower engagement, including numbers of followers, engagement rate, follower growth rate, audience gender, audience age, audience location, likes, last posted timestamp, age, and gender of the user. So heads up to you, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, especially if you've got a good chunk of followers. And even if you don't, even if it's you talking to your mother on Twitter, or excuse me, not Twitter, on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, heads up to you. And finally, I want to talk about Uber, because this is an update on the 2016 data breach that they handled in the worst possible way that came to light in 2017, and which is why I currently boycott them. Now, federal prosecutors have charged Uber's former chief security officer with covering up this massive 2016 data breach by arranging to pay $100,000 to the attacker that was responsible for this. Now, if you recall, they did pay that attacker, and the personal data of 57 million Uber passengers and drivers was stolen in this hack. Now, prosecutors are charging Joe Sullivan, he's the chief security officer, with obstructing justice and concealing a felony for the alleged cover-up. Sullivan, and I quote, engaged in a scheme to withhold and conceal, end quote, the breach from regulators and failed to report it to law enforcement or the public. And this is according to the complaint that was filed in federal court in California this past Thursday. And to quote David Anderson, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California, talking to NPR, and I quote, Sullivan is being charged with a corporate cover-up, and Sullivan is being charged with the payment of hush money to conceal something that never should have been revealed. This is exactly why this is the last thing I want to talk about, because it speaks to the transparency that we should have when we are dealing with a data breach. Uber basically got 57 million of their passengers, their credit card information, their everything exposed. And instead of notifying all of us that were using Uber, myself included, so that we could take proper precautions, whether it's checking our credit cards, looking at our credit scores, making sure we're not part of a data breach, or rather a spreading data breach, they tried to hide it, pay off the attacker, and pretty much leave everybody in the dark. This is how you lose trust in a brand. And when I am advising a client or a new client, because I get clients that call and say, we just got hit with a data breach, what do we do? Part of my advice to them is always, we have to be transparent. We have to disclose all of this information, not just because we might have to file it with the SEC if you're big enough, but because for transparency's sake, if this gets out and you, or rather the people that were affected, your customers, aka the victim, did not hear it from you, they lose trust that you actually have it together. Oh, maybe these guys didn't know about it, now I'm hearing about it on the news, well, screw them. But if they hear it from you, you start to try to reestablish that trust that is automatically lost, or severely lowered at least, when we have a kind of data breach. Uber was horrible through this entire situation, covering it up for almost over a year, and then deflecting when it finally broke. I think it was the Wall Street Journal that broke that. I could correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but that's a huge, huge problem. And so if we are taking the Uber route for this, this is how you lose faith in consumers. This is how you lose business. And ultimately, it shows something very poor at the leadership level in your culture. So please, if you have to go through the most unfortunate thing, which is a data incident, please make sure that transparency, and please make sure that disclosure is part of that. And there are ways to sculpt and craft messages that mitigate the potential damage, but you gotta let people know. That is beyond important. That's why it's the last thing. And those were your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.